Welcome again to the ARIISE Partners Founders First podcast. With me today is Hannah McCollum, CEO and founder of ChicP out of the United Kingdom. It is a food company that specializes in very unique solutions to hummus issues, is a unique way of saying it. I'll let her introduce herself, a little bit about her company, years founded, kind of her journey to get there. And with no further ado, here is Hannah.
Thank you, Ryan. Hi, I'm Hannah. I founded ChicP in 2017 with a mission to educate people around food waste and help people eat more sustainably, natural food, and have more interesting hummus flavors on the market, which didn't have preservatives in them. And reason being is that I was in the food service industry and a lot of working at events and then a lot of private chefing, and at the large events is where I saw a vast amount of food go to waste. I'm very passionate about British farming and supporting farmers as well, and I saw that a lot of farmers were going under because they weren't having their non-aesthetically pleasing vegetables accepted by supermarkets. And then as a chef, I was turning all my leftovers into delicious dips and hummus. So my reputation was, what's the dip of the day, Hannah? So my aim was to actually go out and create a dip that people were kind of inspired by.
How did the ChicP name come about? Was it just literal, or did it come from a creative place?
It was a creative place. I think it took a little bit of time. There was a lot of different names on a piece of paper, and I was like, something was kind of pulling through, but it wasn't quite yet. And I didn't want to have my name in the company name. I didn't like that idea because a lot of people are like, Hannah's Hummus. But that would just cringe me out immediately. So it came about by me kind of going, it was written down different forms of chickpea. Didn't want to limit it just to the word like chickpea in terms of people thinking about the pulse. It was kind of keeping the chic, so not me, but like a woman chic, because chickpea comes from the goddess of Venus, which is very feminine and chic, and then the P is kind of keeping the chic in the P because it's a P. So that's how it came out.
Good. No, I always love asking founders how they came up with the name.
Yeah.
Our story is so boring. We wanted to use a verb. We wanted to have something of growth. And we got to ARIISE not because it was unique. We had a same thing, list on a piece of paper, working out. But we wanted a verb, a call to action. And we tried to buy ARIISE, and we could have bought the trademark and the .com, but it was going to cost us about $280,000 US.
Whoa.
We added a second I, and it cost us $27.50. So literally the reason we decided to go with the two I's has nothing to do with creativity. It was solely to save money and to get it done faster. So There's no unique story for us. It was just the fastest way and the cheapest way to get to the finish line. But the founder stories I love about how you guys came up with names. It's very good.
Wow.
So the other thing I've seen, every founder has a great story, but every founder has basically two distinct types of people along the journey. And we have a segment on this show called Who Helped You and Who Screwed You? Who helped? What was that impetus? What was that moment where you got over the hump or got to the goal, or someone gave you your first big contract or your first big order? And on the other side of it, who was the one who you think you could go back and tweak that or change that or maybe replace that experience, you may have gotten further faster? What are those two for you?
Gosh, tricky. Because in hindsight, you can tweak something, but you can have the same person there still. I guess I was randomly introduced to my two advisors from a completely random breakfast event I went to up the motorway, which was completely mad for me to go to, and I had no reason to be there, and it's quite embarrassing. But I happened to meet somebody who put me in touch with two guys who were from kind of farming, FMCG background, so they had a lot of retail experience, sales experience, managing director experience, and they basically came on board as advisors and held my hand for those first few years, and they're still advisors today. And I think because I decided to be a solo solo founder, I didn't really have anybody to fall back on for a long time because I didn't raise investment, and that's what, in hindsight, I kind of wish I'd done. And so maybe, even though my advisory team is fabulous, I wish someone had said, let's raise, and that there was continuous discussion on whether we should or whether we shouldn't, and maybe it was my decision at the end of the day, but I guess having a bit more rigor at the beginning with those advisors to maybe connect me to more people to help with that next stage of journey, because it didn't happen as quickly as maybe it should have done. So it's frustrating, and yet they were very helpful at the same time. And then maybe I didn't fall back on them enough when I just don't know whether anything would have been done anyway. But we did get a listing I got a listing with Waitrose, which is, a very sought after supermarket in the UK, on my own, early days. And then, there's back and forth of listing date, where you're going to be on shelf, marketing plans. And suddenly I was just kind of confirming another thing with my buyer, and I got a bounce back saying she was on maternity leave and hadn't passed the listing on, and I had to start all over again. So my first contract was going to be a very exciting big one, and then it fell to pieces, and it's been very difficult to get that contract back again. So yeah.
No, that's fair. I think you said a couple of things during that I want to come back to. One was, you said you chose to be solo. Was there a conversation with others? Was there a decision made where you had different people you were thinking about partnering with, and then you decided to go the solo way? Or was it more of an ego thing? Or what's the story there?
I guess I didn't have anybody in mind. I never really met somebody at that time who could be a co-founder. And I just thought I was fine on my own. And it wasn't ego. It's more like, do I want to split something when I'm not making much money anyway?
No, I understand.
I didn't know. I just didn't have that experience to know what the right decision was. And so I just plowed on my own.
No, that makes
And
sense.
trying to
And
employ somebody instead, and just have somebody employed by me, and then we'd work together as a team anyway.
exactly. So the other thing you said that was really interesting was the planning of the shelf space, and it's something that I think a lot of CPG founders, especially if they're inexperienced, don't realize. That's the key to the whole game, is the shelf. Contracts, purchase orders. In the US, it works differently than the UK. Some people lease shelf space, others contract, others are offered it or win it based upon their sales figures. In your experience so far, walk me through some of what you've experienced with that shelf relationship between the retailer and ChicP.
So I guess because we haven't got any of the multiple retailers yet, I haven't had that massive negotiation piece. But I know that if I do get one of those listings, which you will, there is a price, I think, on the fact that you can pay to be, eye level. But if you're that, and you are likely to launch in not the most beneficial place for you for retail sales, if you don't have a big budget. So being a small brand is tricky, I think. And you have to pay your way. And that's why a lot of the big brands have prime space, shelf space, because they put a huge amount of spend. And I think that's where the retail industry is unfair, because it makes independent, smaller challenger brands be slightly behind, because we don't have the same chance that the big brands do. And it's often the big brands that are the unhealthy ones that are promoting the wrong types of food. And it's the challenger brands who have a mission, who are trying to do something on food waste or health and get people to eat more sustainably. And yet we don't get that shelf space. So on the likes of Whole Foods and Planet Organic, so there are smaller independents, but they're fantastic. I've generally always had really good shelf space, and I don't know whether that's down to loyalty, being a local supplier, so I am local to them, and just being a loyal customer of theirs and always promoting, etc., and then just having good sales. So yeah, it's swings both ways.
So we crossed paths once before on a panel network, but before that, I ran into your brand at Wimbledon, Can you walk us through how you got there? Because that's a unique story too.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, my dad is a tennis player, and so I have always gone to Wimbledon with him, and he's a big part of the club. And I was like, "Can you help me get a Wimbledon listing?" And he was like, "Yeah, I can try. I can, put you in touch with somebody." And so I think a lot of people thought it was through him, but that didn't go anywhere. And it just so happened that I went to somewhere called the Big Festival, which is, I think, Jamie Oliver's festival in the countryside, in the summer. And I think we had a stand there. We did. And Lavazza, who are the big coffee company, came to talk. And they said that one of their biggest customers was Wimbledon. And it's, changed their business around, etc. So I went straight up to him and said, "Hi, amazing, Wimbledon. I've been dying to get there. That's my dreams since starting ChicP. Please can I have the contact." And I went in that way, and we got the listing that first year.
Now, when help our listeners, because some people may not be familiar with CPG and whatnot. When you say we got the listing, what does that mean?
Yes. So, and actually, I don't know whether Wimbledon would still use that terminology because it's slightly different, but it means that Wimbledon decided to stock us. So they decided to buy our products for the tournament, which happens for 2 weeks every year. And there are different ways of supplying Wimbledon. So for us, we supply them in two different ways. We have kilo tubs, so those are our food service, hospitality sized hummus, and they come in basically ice cream tubs is what it looks like. And then so they would then decant those kilo tubs into the members enclosure, into boxes where people have business meet the business days and things like that. And then we also supplied our beetroot hummus in the kilo tubs, and they decanted those into carrot, cucumber, and beetroot hummus takeaway pots for everybody who was walking around the grounds, could pick them up in the cafes and have them on court.
No, the way my brain works, I'm such a visual person that when you talked about the kilo tubs, the ice cream tub types, my brain went to a commercial and people dumping kilos into a pool and some big cracker climbing up, or carrot climbing up the diving board. And someone's like, "Oh, ChicP now comes in kilo size for, home use or whatever." And like the carrot diving into the pool full of, hummus. But like,
Right.
it's just how my brain thinks. But the carry on is so unique. Like, that's such a cool little idea. Now, did they have those containers? Did you have something, or was that a mutual idea, or did that come from them?
No. We've always had the kilo tubs, so we've always supplied. I supplied schools, a little nursery to start off with. We're actually supplying quite a lot of nurseries now. It was always an option to supply food service and retail because you can get quite good volumes on the food service side. So yeah.
I just really like the idea of, at the Wimbledon thing, when you buy one, you're carrying it with you, throughout the process. I find it to be really neat.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so.
So what the question I have now is, you're 6 years into this, 7 years, is that right?
7. Yeah.
7. Hannah now versus Hannah 7 years ago.
Yeah.
What would be the couple big pieces of advice you would give Hannah -7?
Yeah. I've changed a lot. I would say this year, this has been my big transition change. Basically, the first few years was me running about doing pretty much everything myself. I didn't have any funding. I just wanted to go the slow and organic route. And so for some businesses, those first few years almost don't count. And actually, I think a lot of people would count me as starting year 3 is when we got our Ocado listing, and that's when things started to move. And the first 2 years was just learning, cycling everywhere with my hummus. And so if I was to do it again, I would, it's very hard to know, but I guess I would not do so many admin, field sales stuff, because it takes up a huge amount of energy and time, and is actually a distraction if you want to grow faster and hit the big boys and get bigger sales. And so I was just always busy. And I remember my dad saying to me, "You're always so busy, but is what you're doing actually growing the business?" And even to this day, I'm still distracted by the noise that comes into my inbox. And that's one thing that I have decided literally the last few months, is that I want someone to oversee my emails so that I am not like dealing with crap that I do not need to see this far down the business. I need to be building and growing relationships and doing founder-led stuff, and not being distracted by nitty-gritty people selling me, SEO stuff. And so my focus is much more focused, and I think delegation is really important, and learning to do that early on.
Well, what I've always explained to founders that come on to the ARIISE Partners track is it's sales, it's cash flow, and God willing profits. And then, yes, eat it. Your profits are going to go back into the company. It's just going to be the way it goes. Because even if
Yeah,
you spend the profits on the company, the banks will appreciate and see the balance sheet of profit. So they're still going to give you the lending, but you still want to put more than that back in, back in, back in. And
yeah,
regardless of all the administrative things people try to sell us, right? The SEO crap, the MLM marketing crap, all that thing is that founders are embedded with. All these stupid vendors out there trying to get $1,000 or $5,000 out of our pockets. I always tell founders focus on sales. You won't go wrong focusing on sales.
yeah.
You can
I know.
have you'll have of all the time you spend in your startup, sell and sell more and then sell more. You can, if you make enough money, you can hire the people to handle the rest of the garbage, but
Yeah,
sell. And so that's always been my advice. And I've always pushed bootstrapping over external investors, especially early stage, because if you don't have enough to sustain your own lifestyle and sales, and this is a big issue with founders, they're used to the lifestyle of a corporate job with a consistent income. And if
yeah,
they transition to a startup, they're like, well, I expect to live that same lifestyle. It's like, no, you're going to be eating shit for a couple years.
yeah. 100%.
No new cars, no vacations. And even if you have the time or the money for those things, you're not going to have the, let me rephrase, if you're not going to have the money for those things, you're not going to have the time for it. You shouldn't have the time for it. You
Yeah.
should be selling, selling, going, going. So that's our advice. Go that way. And then if you need extra money, the debt or the capital, yeah, there's guys like us who can help you. But that's the key, is the sales growth.
Yeah.
So have you been the primary salesperson of ChicP up until now? Have you ever delegated any of that?
Yeah, I have delegated. I think I got a bit tired of it, if I'm being honest. A few years ago, I was like, do I not know the retail language as well as I could do? And therefore I wanted to so I brought on a sales consultant who had worked with the retailers before, but I don't think they had that authenticity and passion that I would otherwise show. So I guess over the last few years, it's almost been like a double up, me and the salesperson, but I have needed that support because there's so much to go after as well. But it's exhausting, with that kind of constant perseverance and buyers constantly saying, not right now. And so I thought, yeah, maybe I should hand it over. And I still have the issue of knowing what's the right today, but I still do sales, of course. And what I want to do is get out and about more, like get in my car, go meet people, and then have someone who's experienced kind of doing the back end sales and making sure that people are being followed up, and just making sure that I'm doing the right
So
thing as
you want to
well.
be more of the connector. You want to be more of the connector and setter, not the closer. You want to have someone in the background just finalizing the deals.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
you are in fact still in sales, in the sales cycle, but you're doing it more of a high level. You're the face of the brand. You're the expert. You're the this, and then you're
Yeah,
handing them off to the closing team and setting team.
exactly.
I've seen a lot of founders do that. It works pretty well. It's just a matter of, at some point, you want it to be devoid of you in the process. Your time is better spent on strategy and growth and the next idea and the next marketplace and the next master plan.
It's
So
quite
it's a
no. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So that's Hannah -7. Is there any other advice you would give?
I said the delegation bit. I mean, what I did is speak to a lot of founders and I reached out to a lot of people to get as much advice as possible. And I think that's really important just to, every meeting you are likely to learn something and don't be on your own because it can be a lonely journey otherwise. So I think getting out there as much as possible is really important.
Well, it sounds like you and your dad are close. Has he been kind of like a free advisor throughout the process?
Yeah, I mean, he does keep saying, I'm quite costly, I'm like, well, not yet. I'll give
Do
him
you
something.
think he'd be the one who, after you get to a certain level, is your relationship like an American relationship where he'll sue you for a piece of the company after you achieve massive success? Or is he
Beginning.
more of a sweetheart?
I think that'll just be an ongoing joke and I'll just kind of brush it to the side. No, I would love to reward him at the end. So that would be one of my aims of making it a success.
Now, is he retired now or is he still working?
He is supposedly retired, but it's quite funny how much he's mentioned. I don't normally talk about him. But he's then now being brought into a paddle company, paddle tennis. So he's doing a bit of work on that.
That's becoming big business everywhere. I remember seeing a founder come through our doors years ago, 6, 7, almost 8 years ago now, with this, oh, pickleball, paddleball is the next thing. And I was like, this is never going to take off. And boy, was I wrong on that.
Wow.
I'm wrong on a couple of things. That was a big one. If I could
Yeah.
have been an early investor in pickleball in the U.S. Major League like 9 years ago, and I was like, nah.
So funny, isn't it? You just don't
But
know. I mean, yeah, I mean, he could have been again on the dad front. He was asked to be on or like chairman or something of Capella, which is the apple juice brand. So he could have been in my industry, but he's like, nah, I don't think that's going to be a success. And then it was a success.
oh, like
Just turn the
yeah,
light
that's
on.
the Ryan -7 person, right? Going back 7 years and saying, listen, don't say no right away. That would be my biggest advice to me 7 years ago. Everything has a tinge of BS on it. There's a smell to everything. Don't say no right away. Do more research in the industry
Yeah.
and be more discerning of the person.
Okay.
Don't judge the industry based on the scoundrel pitching you the industry. Look at the industry and then try to find a better entry into the industry. I was going solely off of the EQ earlier on in my career.
Yeah.
I have the finance background and I have the MBA training and I have all of these things, and I'm like, I wasn't looking at the science of it, the statistics of it, the market research of it. So my advice to founders is, as always, don't let the person giving you a bad pitch make your decision for the entire industry. Step
Yeah.
back and look at the bigger picture. You can always find another founder or another opportunity or another entry level into an industry. It doesn't have to be this one. And I think that's the advice I'd give myself if I had to go back and do it all over again.
Yeah. True. True.
That's an inward focused, right? Your advice and my advice to ourselves and to each other. Let's go outwardly. You meet a young woman, 25 years old. She has this recipe that she thinks is great. You meet her at one of these events and you taste it and you're like, wow, this is amazing. What's the first two things you tell her?
Make sure you've got a strong USP, so unique selling point. Like there has to be something that's different about what you're doing and better than anything else that's out there. Otherwise, you're going to really struggle to get to market and then be a success if something's already there. I would actually be really careful of categories that are own label dominated. So when I say own label, I mean supermarkets that already do their own version themselves because it is dominated, which the hummus category is. Your entry point is going to be hard because they're going to be able to produce it at a much lower cost, and they're much likely to more likely to prioritize their own production unless you've got that unique selling point. And secondly, make sure you just love what you're doing because you've got to think ahead and think, am I going to still enjoy talking about hummus or whatever it is in 3 years' time every day? Because you're going to have to be selling it, frankly. And if you don't believe in what you're doing and therefore aren't passionate about it, you're probably going to want to hand it over to someone else very early, and then that's going to show. and it'd be a much trickier journey.
And that's what I tell every founder, and it's a recurring theme every time I hear a founder tell me their story. It's the passion,
Yeah,
because you don't have to make $1 million or have $100 million exit to be a successful entrepreneur. If
I like.
you replace your salary,
Yeah,
what was that?
no, that's so nice to hear because I think I'm very happy with where I am in my business. And yes, it's been a bit slower than I'd like, but I'm only saying that because I'm looking at competition and going, oh my God, they've got to this revenue or they're on this listing. But if I didn't have any of that, I would not think there was a problem with where we were at all. And we've done very well for having had no
No, yeah,
investment. And so raising money, seeing other brands is what can really bring you down. You have to just block that noise out.
and that's what we hear and coach. It's, listen, if you have a $80,000 a year salary and you hate your boss and you hate your coworkers and you hate your job, and you can replace it with 75,000, but you set your schedule and you're passionate about your product or your service and you love your clients or your customers, isn't that a better life? You don't have to be the millionaire, billionaire, exit unicorn to be a successful entrepreneur. All you have to do is be able to live and be passionate about what you're living off of with the work you're doing. That's
Yeah.
it. That is that successful entrepreneur definition. Replacing your income and choosing your lifestyle. The end.
Great. Well, I'm really successful now then. I didn't think
There
I
you
was.
go.
I mean, I've had my ups and downs going, this is too much, but actually, yeah, it's only because other people are putting pressure on me and I'm very happy otherwise.
But that's the thing, right? We look at it as a frame of, wow, my firm is X, that's 3X. I'm not successful. But
Yeah.
if your X replaces a job that you would hate, you are a success.
Yeah. I have my own
Because
freedom.
my father
Yes.
taught me at a very young age. My
Hmm.
father and grandfather were very instrumental in my upbringing.
Oh,
And the lesson I was told over and over and over again was, there is nothing worse, on the planet than waking up next to a person you don't want to be with,
yeah.
and or going to a job you hate. Those are the two worst feelings on the earth.
So agree. Yeah, absolutely. And that
So if age 5 and now I'm 41,
those have
it
been
was
your,
just pounded into me. So I was launching my first companies like in my teen years, because I was like, I'm not working for anybody else. I don't want to make a mistake.
love that. Because you do have the choice with both those options.
And that's what people don't get. You have the choice. You
Yeah.
don't have to stay with the pretty guy or girl
Yeah.
because everyone else likes them. If you're not happy, you're not happy. And I don't like the word happy. I think happiness is fleeting. I think it's temporary. I think safe is the better word to use. If someone makes you feel safe emotionally, safe physically, safe mentally, safe financially, happiness comes from that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's happiness. Happiness, it comes from a base of safety. You're safe with that person on all fronts of the human condition.
Yeah.
And I look at business the exact same way. If you're safe in your time spent, you enjoy doing it. If you're safe in your mental, you respect yourself and others respect you for doing it. If you're financially viable, you can pay your own salary and live off of what you do with your company. That's not happiness. That's sustainability. That's success.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
happiness comes from the fact that you're respected for doing it and you love doing it and you can make money doing it. That's the successful measure, not this number of zeros behind the number. Because there's millionaires who are miserable and billionaires who are miserable. I know a bunch of them.
It's a known fact. What you think the line never, well, when you get to that point, it's like real enlightenment, but it's not.
So, how do you pitch ChicP? When you walk in and you want to get a new listing, or you're in front of a new potential networking event or a potential retailer who has 18 shelves for you, what do you say to them? What's your pitch?
Blimey. I say hello. Um, I founded ChicP and I tell them about the story. We produce the best tasting hummus in the UK, which has a sustainable mission and is completely natural. And now we've developed the first in the market ambient hummus, which is non-refrigerated, a completely new development that complements our chilled range. So we have two really massive opportunities in both chilled and ambient. And for the first time, hummus is now available in the travel and convenience sector, which otherwise it wasn't before because it doesn't need refrigeration. And we have completely unique flavors. And now in January, we will be actually launching all those flavors with new recipes, which use a new byproduct and are replacing rapeseed oil with olive oil. So we are completely passionate about our ethos, which is becoming as healthy and sustainable as possible and making the changes when we can, where we can.
That's a mouthful. Now, is that when you bust out the 1 kilo bucket and say, try some? Was that the moment you just bring it over your shoulder?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I didn't know how long the pitch you wanted to be. If it was a one line.
No, I asked the question to be as vanilla as possible to let someone fill in the gaps.
Cool.
Because are you familiar with the straight line sales approach? The guy, the Wolf of Wall Street, the famous movie with DiCaprio. He was called the straight line sales approach.
Oh.
The theory behind it, which is what he was so successful at selling people on his dummy stocks in the 80s, was don't tell someone the value of what you're selling them. That's not a straight line approach. Like, it's this amazing hummus that does this and does that, replaces this and replaces that. That's telling you the benefits of the product.
Okay.
You still haven't talked about the need of the customer.
Yes, I didn't count.
So that wonderful paragraph with all of those wonderful features in it, if they don't need it, they're glazing over and they're like, great, nice to meet you. I'll see you later. Whatever. The way I look at pitching is you have to know your audience first. Second, you have to know what their pain point is. So if you meet someone who's a retailer and they have 18 open shelves, you're like, what would you love to be at that spot? Not specifically, not like, another soda brand or a hummus brand or whatever, but what do you want there? Well, I want something that sells 28 units a week.
Right.
Okay. Mine sells 31. Because you asked the question, they're telling you their pain point, and now you can adapt your pitch to them. They don't care if it's hummus or what the benefits of the hummus is or what the overall arcing story of the company is. They care that they're getting their problem fixed. So that's the mentality of the straight line sales approach is you actually ask the question of what's the need, then you adapt your pitch to it.
Yeah. So I guess
maybe they do want to know all the benefits of your hummus, but that might be the second or third or fourth question, not the first way to pitch.
Yeah. Okay. I guess with your question, I didn't know who I was pitching to, but
No. I'm not. There's no criticism. I was just making a point.
No, that's very helpful. I'm going to bring you in to help me with my pitches, if that's all right.
Yes, we are paid. We are paid to coach on pitching. That's one of the things we do.
Okay.
Now, last thing we do in every episode is we talk about one specific problem you're facing now, and we do the best we can live to solve or at least get the direction of the solution of the problem. So what's the number one problem you're facing? If you had a list in your email of all the chatter and all of the problems, what's the one that you're like, we got to solve this one first, top of the list?
I want to get Waitrose and Sainsbury's over the line because they are tricky to seal a deal with. And I'm a bit bored
of them tricky?
Showing interest, but then not getting a deal. So that's what we need to do.
So sales, closing those retailers is the problem.
Yeah.
Now, do they have gatekeepers at their retailer? Is it like a representative, a person who purchases, or is it higher up the food chain?
No. So I could actually go up to someone higher in the chain, but they don't have the authority to make decisions. So it has to go back down to the buyer. And buyers change a lot as well. So it's quite hard to build a relationship, and then you have to start again. Sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes it's very annoying.
Now, have you asked the buyer what they want from you?
Yeah, I have.
What is
Not
their
all of
answer?
them. Some of them have. Some of them want. Some of them want my ingredients to be all from waste, which is not possible. And it's a silly request because if they knew
Because
the
of
food,
what they want to build the narrative? Is that what they want? Is
yeah,
that the issue?
yeah.
So, what other pushbacks have you received from them?
We're not looking for anything like this at the moment, which is an often one, thank you, or we're not range reviewing right now. But often it's like, we really like your brand and your products, but we're not looking to bring you on at the moment. It's just a bit loosening more.
Well, there's a pushback to that pushback. Are you ready to hear it? Because I think listeners also are probably going to hear that a lot too. I've heard it many times in my career.
Mm-hmm.
You push back immediately and you
Yeah,
say, well, when is it going to happen? When do
yeah,
you review? Get a hard date. When do you review your product line?
yeah,
What would it take to get a yes out of you today or a meeting scheduled? Ask them a direct question. Cut through the bullshit.
yeah,
That is, I try to explain to founders all the time, is someone makes a sale on every call. They're going to sell you a no, or you're going to sell them a yes. You don't have to get a yes, but you have to get an extension of the conversation.
absolutely.
Another call, a date, a follow-up, a meeting, a pitch. You have to get something out of that call to push, even if it gets kicked down the road. You're pushing back to show them you're gonna bring us on.
Mm-hmm.
It might be with your stupid little jump through the hoops corporate decision-making process, but we're coming into this. How do
Yeah,
we get there? Walk me through the process. Walk me through why, the when, the where. It's not the fact that it's just more work for them to change a product out.
exactly. Exactly.
And that's something that founders don't get. You're not being rejected because your product isn't good. You're being rejected because it requires corporate to actually move and do something different and change their offerings. And that requires paperwork and approvals and emails and meetings and budgets and all this other stuff. It's just easier to say no.
Yeah,
So you have to push back and say, we're going to be on your shelf. How do we get there? What,
yeah,
and even as, like what I just said, be specific. What is the order of the decision making from today's call until I'm on your shelf that has to occur for me to be on your shelf?
yeah,
If they answer that question, they've just given you the exact roadmap of how to close, and you
yeah.
push back. And you also show them a spine. And typically, whether it's female, male, old, or young, they respect the founder who's pushing their brand and pushing it hard.
Yeah. Great.
But yeah, get an answer out of them. What will it take? What's the decision-making process at the firm? Who
Yeah,
has to make that decision? Who's the next meeting we have to go to? After this, if you said yes today, not no. If you said yes, what would be the next step? How do we
yeah,
get there?
yeah. Thank you, Brian.
Put it back on them. Okay,
Yeah,
that's fine. You're too busy today. When won't you be busy? Okay, today's a no. What would it take to get a yes? If it
yeah,
is a yes, what's the next 3 steps? At least you're getting information from the group you're trying to close. Now you can tailor your pitch the next time.
mhm.
Because if they get replaced every 6 months, which procurement officers usually do, now you know what the steps is internally,
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
you have a new reset button.
Yeah, no, exactly. Thanks, Ryan.
It's built in.
Boom.
Well,
Fabulous.
that's what we do. It's what we do.
Oh,
So I really appreciate you coming on. We're going to cut the episode at this point due to the fact that we could talk for days about your company and I'd be enthralled. Can't speak for all listeners, but I love talking to founders. I love talking about especially CPG because it's so unique. Every single item you sell helps, right? It's a one for one.
Yeah.
So few companies now do that. It's all SaaS, right? They build this multi-million-dollar platform and they have to get one contract, and then it's successful. So they go
Wow.
into huge debt to build this guess that this software is going to change the landscape of the market. I love CPG because it's a one for one. You either love my hummus or you don't. You either buy it or you don't. It's such an
Yeah.
easy yes or no. I love it. It's so much more
Loves the
visceral.
well, and that's what's the annoying thing.
Yeah,
Is
exactly.
selling a lot more of it.
Exactly. Well, I appreciate you being on, and we'll post Hannah's information at the bottom of this episode on the screen and links as well. So if you want to try her products, reach out and make contact, or maybe even potentially partner up on something, we'll put all that information into the episode and on the bottom of the descriptions where this episode is played. But Hannah, thank you again for coming on. And to the audience, this is again Hannah McCollum with ChicP out of the UK.
Thank you, Ryan. Lovely to speak to you again. Appreciate it.
No problem.